If I travel with this thing, it takes up half my bag. If I am going on a plane, this is my carry-on item. Hello! Here is one of the most important parts of language learning, and that is starting your language study plan. Maybe not the most exciting for some people. For me, I'm definitely a planner. I spend more time planning than actually doing, so that's a little awkward. No big deal, right? So, okay, you know what language you want to study, your gears are grinding, you're super excited to get started. Sit down with your little mug of tea or whatever, and suddenly it all goes blank. You don't know what to do, you don't know what to get started on, you've got your textbook here, it doesn't look that interesting. It's okay, it happens to all of us. So first thing is to do not fret, my child. Before you sit down and learn a new language, there are a few things that might be better if you figure that out. Ooh, what is happening here? So, first of all, really important to know, what are you looking to get out of this language? Are you looking to read the original translation? Maybe you want to get into that literature. If that's the case, maybe reading is probably going to be your main focus. If you never went through your ancient Egypt phase or your Percy Jackson phase, and now you're gonna point all your chaotic energy at one thing and you decide it's gonna be a language in its entirety, well, you're in the right place. You need a foundation. Whatever it is you want out of this language, you need a foundation. You need a basis of grammar so you can understand the input that is in front of you and hopefully have a solid set of communication skills. And one thing that can help you with that is getting to know how you learn. If you went to public school, you probably remember your teacher giving you these little sheets. That's you check off which you identify most with, and at the end you learn if you're a tactile or an auditory learner or a visual learner. And generally I was always disappointed at my results, although, you know I'm a visual learner, but great, what does that mean? I'm hoping to do another video in which I go a little more into depth with that, but basically, if picturing you learning grammar in a classroom setting seems like the worst possible use of your time, then maybe that's probably not the way to go for you and your style of learning, and that's totally fine. Everyone is different. This is gonna take some trial and error, and that's the fun, right? That's why we do it. It's to grow and to learn. So my recommendation for you, whichever method you decide to use, is if you have not yet passed the B1 CEFR level, I strongly recommend a tutor. And frankly, I recommend a tutor at any point in your journey. But if you're a beginner, I recommend a tutor that has also learned your target language, and preferably one that speaks your native language or is also native to your native language. Because if that's the case, chances are there are plenty of things that was confusing to them in their language learning journey. Having someone with knowledge of teaching and personal experience of that language, you can fast track right through those little confusing tidbits. This is important because in the initial stages of learning, it makes it so much easier when somebody can put into, familiar terms why grammar structure is the way that it is, why do you have this irregularity versus this one. It makes it so much easier. Conversely, if you are above a B1 level, I recommend having a tutor who is native to your target language, because that's when you really start to incorporate the slang, descriptive speech versus prescriptive speech like you've been learning. I also recommend tutors because oral output is the hardest part of a language to master, because this is your speech communication skills, and it's difficult to produce that in real time with a native speaker. It's important to note here that I'm referring to people who are interested in the whole scope of the language. If you're learning Latin, conversation's probably not your main focus. So the way I got conversational in German in 3 years, I will admit I did it through university, so it was much easier because they had the material set up, they had the deadline set up, they know what methods to use, which is way different experience than if you're self-studying, especially if it's your first foreign language. You don't know the language, you don't know what you need to focus on. That can be really hard, but I will admit, despite my former German instruction, if I hadn't gone outside the classroom and worked on my own out of my own motivation, I would not have spoken nearly as well as I do. So one thing I really liked about this specific German program is the first year. So the beginning year, which is A1 through A2 for CEFR standard, you created a foundation which was heavy grammar based, heavy speaking based, with a little like cultural tidbits sprinkled throughout that applied to the theme of that unit. And I found that to be really good because you could get speaking from the get-go. You could build your confidence. In the second year, what we did was we went over that grammar, went a little more in depth, sprinkled in like classical literature, we listened to songs, we looked at poems, we watched films, and the instruction was almost entirely in German. And I didn't feel like I was behind, I didn't feel like my classmates were behind. I felt extremely accomplished that I was keeping up. I found that extremely engaging. To be able to recall back to the year before in regards to grammar was incredibly helpful. So that's my plug for reviewing your content. Learn from me and my mistakes. For the next point, materials. Super important. Maybe you've decided that a classroom-based structure works really well for you, and it helps to have that like somebody breathing down your neck, maybe not breathing down your neck, but my problem is that I really love buying books and I have a much harder time actually reading them. My recommendation for you is to save your money, look online and see what materials look good to you. I would recommend looking at the date, making sure that they are not published before the year 2000, because believe it or not, language changes really quickly. And if the book isn't catered to somebody of, say, a more engagement dependent, stimulus dependent material, such as myself, I tend to get very bored very quickly. So look out for that. Another thing that is crucial to resource, make sure that the answers to the exercises are in the back or somewhere on, like if it's not a real textbook, whatever, it doesn't matter, as long as it's specific to whatever resource you're using. Because I found so many incredible free resources that have great examples and great exercises, but the answers aren't anywhere to be seen. Another thing, maybe not so self-explanatory, Tumblr is an incredible place to find resources. There is a mega file floating around Tumblr right now with any language that I can think of, plus at least 30 more. These are regional dialects, these are indigenous languages, creoles, really anything you've ever heard of and more. Moving on from like your textbooks and things, you know, trial and erroring your like journaling. I recommend keeping your exercise and reflections and all that in the same place, whether it's a journal or computer database or whatever. I made a hideous decision to buy a journal with 3 journals in it for my Russian. Here you go. It's 3 journals. I don't know if you can see it. This is a monstrosity. It sucks to carry around. Would not recommend that. I'm sad to say this, but I'm at the point where my computer is my best friend. You can have 3 different notebooks, but that makes it really tricky when you're traveling or if you're like me and you don't actually enjoy studying in your apartment. So to carry 3 massive journals to the coffee shop, you know, like you do you. Language learning isn't always expensive, but coffee sure is. To recap, you have source material, whether that's a textbook and or exercise book. You have a tutor or someone who can give you feedback. You also have a notebook or somewhere to keep all your exercises, reflections, your notes, etc. So that's great, but what is it that you should actually do during a study session? I noticed that a lot of polyglots have a daily, weekly, monthly schedule that they keep for themselves, and I do that too, and I find it really helpful. These are hard goal activities, hard not as in difficult, more as in activities you can definitively check off, like that's done. And the daily goals are obviously a lot smaller, and the monthly goals are something you work up to prove progress during that month. Again, this is all subjective. Maybe every day you want to listen to a song and write down all the words you don't know yet, or you want to write a little blurb on what you're going to do today. It really just depends on your level and what you're interested in getting out of that language again. But if you don't listen to anything else I say in this video, listen to this. When you sit down to a study session, you should already know what you're going to do in that time. How long should you study? I get this question all the time and I don't have an answer for you. I'm so sorry. Because everyone is so very different. I know a lot of people really enjoy the Pomodoro method, in which you intensively focus for 25 minutes with a 5-minute break. And during that break, you know, your materials are closed. You maybe just walk around the block or something. You're not even thinking, processing that work. For me, it works better if it's more of a 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off kind of thing. I don't know. It's up to you. It's like across the week, I definitely recommend studying for no less than 15 minutes a day and no more than 3 hours interspersed over the course of one day. I have these language learning binges where I get really, really excited to learn a language and I'm really motivated, and I'll sit down at my desk for like 5 hours. And then the next day, I don't want to hear the language ever again. I'm burnt out already. It's better to cut yourself off when you're at a high point to, build that potential energy a little bit and feel refreshed at the end of your study session than to just exhaust yourself in one go. And, if you get to the point where you are feeling burnt out, that's your body telling you that you need to take a break. So take a day, a couple days, a week even, take a break from your studies, but don't be one of the 91% of people that start a language and then never finish. During that time, relax, let yourself relax, with the intention of starting again later on. Follow through, but don't push yourself, but also do the thing. One thing I don't see recommended nearly enough as part of your study session is a reflection at the end, and this can take 2 minutes. It can take 2 minutes. In addition to keeping track of your progress and how you feel about your progress, it serves as kind of a transition mode for your brain from a intense focused study session to the rest of your day. And these can be questions like, what worked well? And granted, the answer to this question, it can sound like something on a colorful poster in a kindergarten classroom, but
adults need positive affirmations too.
Compliment yourself sometimes. Another reflection question can be, what did not work so well? Or how do I feel about the sources I used? Or what was left unclear from the lesson? What do I still need to learn more about? I find these to be particularly helpful because if you don't reflect, then I find myself, I don't know you, I find myself doing grammar drills like a robot, and I get to the end, I'm like, cool, I did that, check, but I walk away having gained nothing. And for my final point, maintenance/logs. Self-study takes a lot of things. It takes discipline, assessment, motivation, all this other stuff. It's crucial to hold yourself accountable. If you can look at the amount of time you spent on your language in the past week or the past month, it's really invigorating. It can really help you to see, where the gaps are. When I was younger, I used to publish my weekly logs on Tumblr, which was fine, although I realized after a little while that nobody cares. And that's fine. The point of them was not to show off, or the point of them was not to show everybody what I'd done or whatever. I would publish it as a way of holding myself accountable, because I felt like if people were waiting for me to publish each week, then I would have to do it, right? I can't disappoint these people. But the problem with that is nobody cared and nobody looked at them, and that's fine. Again, not publishing them to get popular. I moved onto a website called Polylogger, which I found is incredible. It's specific for language learning and for, logging how much time you've done and what you did over that time. It creates really nice graphs if you're into that. So if you keep up with your language learning, you follow these tips, hopefully you should get to a point where your materials, while they have served you well, you're starting to feel like they're not challenging you as enough, or maybe you've finished them even. And to that, I have to say, congratulations. Not many people do that. Not many people get that far. It's really impressive, and you should pat yourself on the back here. Very cool. All that means is that you need something more tricky and that you're moving up in the world, so congrats. Well, this has gone on for far too long. I have had such a good time with you. I hope that you got something out of this. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, let me know, but be nice. I am fragile. Love you. Bye.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.